Hey guys, first regardsman here, and today I'll be tier listing every single enemy in Space Marine 2 patch 8.0 from Minoris to even Terminus. Now before we actually get into the list here, I do want to say that we are ranking these guys in terms of the horde dynamic they have, because really any enemy in Space Marine 2 is very easy to kill on their own. That's why we're talking about them in a horde, because it is a horde shooter after all, and that's kind of their purpose. They all fit a little bit of a niche. Now first up we have the Hormagaunt. I do think Hormagaunts are like the overall easiest Minoris besides like Chaos Cultists, and they do die in like 2 synapse bursts. When the hordes of these come, they are accompanied by at least 2 majors in most cases. When they're on their own, they can chunk you down at times. That's mainly if you like cataclysmically fuck up or don't have a fencing weapon. Really that's only for block, so for that reason alone, put them in C. They're quite easy to deal with. They're also pretty fun to actually fight in this game. Now next guy we have up is the Termagant. Termagants I think are stronger than Hormagaunts. They can chip your HP down quite a bit if they're on their own, or like there's a bunch of these guys that dumped out at range. And in patch 8.0, absolute difficulty loves sending a ton of these guys, and they can be pretty irritating. Though I will say, in like an actual horde of Tyranids, they don't really do much, but they can sometimes just pin you down from a range. So we'll put them in B because they are stronger than these guys, but not that dangerous. Next enemy here is the Spore Mine. Now, Spore Mines pre-patch 8.0 did 55% more explosive damage. I would have easily put them in S tier for that reason alone. Now they are not as bad. They are still incredibly impactful though, so I would put them in A. And if there is like a Biovore around, he can definitely dump out like the super ultra one that will leave like an AoE on the ground, and that is super obnoxious. I'm going to count that in this listing for these guys here, so they're going to A. And they can still one-shot you at times if there's like enough of them, and that reason alone I think is a good reason to have them over here. Now, as far as the Tyranid Warrior, Sword Warrior in particular goes, these guys are easy S. They are one of the most busted Majoris in this game. When they put up their sword arms, they block 100% of range fire. If you get hit by one of these and they put their block up immediately after, you cannot get your HP back. They are brutal. They are also one of the only enemies in this game that can properly 100 to 0 you. They can actually stun lock you from full HP to nothing. Like, and really only a couple other enemies in the entire game can do that. They are brutal. Their enraged form is completely overtuned in my opinion. They just heal and they have no stagger, and they just sit there and block you. It takes like 10 seconds to actually kill one at times. Pretty obnoxious. I don't like these guys a lot. I really hope that they actually rework their block a bit, because their block will also block 100% of damage from an assault ground pound, or like 99% of it. It's really obnoxious, and that's why they go into S. Now, next guy we have here is a Tyranid Warrior with a Devourer cannon. These guys are pretty strong. They're quite easy to dodge once you actually learn how their pattern goes, but they will occasionally fill your screen up with like little barbs. So we're just gonna put them in A. When they go enraged, they can actually like instantaneously kill you, so you could argue they should be an S, but I don't think they're that bad, to be honest, and A is a pretty good spot for them in my opinion. Next guy here is a Barb Strangle Warrior. These guys are pretty devastating in a group, mainly because their barbs will come out and you'll be like hunted down by a Carnifex or hunted down by a Lictor, and just be getting your armor chipped away. So that's pretty brutal, and they can be very, very oppressive at times. I think they deserve to also be an A because their impact is quite high. On their own, they do basically nothing, but you know, they're not supposed to do anything on their own because they really are just like an area denial guy. So we're gonna put them in A. Next guy we have here is the Lictor. This Lictor here is easy S. When these guys are on you in a boss horde, they are brutal. They will be absolutely devastating. They will hound you. They have some of the most staggered attacks in this game. They are very susceptible to parries, but in a group they will still stagger their attacks. And if you have a block weapon, they are easily the most difficult enemy to fight of the Extremis guys on Tyranids with a block. And they're just pretty brutal in general. They're very relentless, probably the strongest. Really the Hive Mine's champion here is the best way to put it. And when there's like a Carnifex or like a Neurothrope that's sending out a wave, they are that much more obnoxious. They make it very difficult to pull off anything until they are gone. So that's why we're putting them in S. They have a very high impact. Now, Raveners. Raveners, you could argue, should also be an S because they do have a very obnoxious combat string. Like, their attack string here is very long. It can catch you from a pretty far range. They can lock you down for quite a bit. They're kind of like more similar to the Scarab Occult Terminators in the sense that they lock you down when they actually kill you. They do have a pretty obnoxious grab, especially if it takes a while to learn. I would probably put them in a very high A. I don't think they're quite S because like I'm not remotely as worried of a Ravener as I am a Lictor, because like one Lictor with a Carnifex is just incredibly devastating, and one One Ravener just does not have the same impact in my opinion, but overall they're still very powerful, and I would put them in a very high A, maybe even a low S, but for now I'm just going to put them for here. So now the next guy we have here is a Zoanthrope. I don't think Zoanthropes are that dangerous anymore, especially since the way this game's AI works is the more enemies are on your screen, especially in siege mode, they fire even less, and usually they die before they even get a shot off in siege mode. I'd probably put them in like C tier, or maybe I'll put them in B tier, because I just think they're like the weakest of all the extremists at the moment. They don't do a ton, and you can very easily just like find walls once you understand the maps that like they cannot shoot through. It's pretty easy to deal with them, and pretty much every class has a heavy bolt pistol now, so you can just shoot them in the face even if you're like a secondary guy. And most of your classes also have range buffs at the moment, and they only come in packs of 2. Actually, excuse me, they can come in packs of 3, and that can be kind of annoying. But if you have like a sniper on your team with like any type of proper DMR type weapon, they will just die instantaneously. They're not that impactful anymore, and like once you learn the dodge timing on them, they're also pretty easy. So this might be a controversial placement, but I just don't think Zoanthropes are as overtuned as they used to be. They used to be very annoying due to their giant shield they had that constantly swapped. They still do that. It's not as bad as it used to be, and if you can catch them off guard and kill their partner before they link up, they can't buff each other and they'll die incredibly quickly. So I just put them in B. They are still pretty obnoxious, so you could argue they should be an A, but this is my personal placement. Now, the next guy we have here is the Biovore. Biovores are S tier. Biovores just dump out Spore Mines. They are very oppressive on the map. They take a very long time to kill. Their execution length, like when they go into a red state, it is so short that you can only actually execute one of them. So if you blow up like a whole horde of Biovores, there's like 3 planted down, you melt the bomb them, you're only gonna be able to execute one before the other ones get back up, which is very irritating. They also have like the single most irritating move in the entire game, which is like their dash. They are incredibly fast and they'll knock you over, and there's basically like no counterplay to that. The amount of times I've seen people actually perfect dodge that is like single digit, and they are just super oppressive, and that knockback can actually kill you. They will knock you back. You can't take damage after, so if they run through you at like Mach 50 and then you get knocked over and then a Lictor comes in and slaps you, or even a Carnifex, you're in a pretty bad spot. So I put them in S tier. They just have an incredible map impact. They might not be the thing that directly kills you, but they get you killed either way, so that's why I put them here. Next guy we have here is the Terminus Carnifex. Now, I think the Carnifex is pretty fun to fight in this game. He only has like one ability that I would say is pretty proper overtuned, or maybe like just needs a little bit of a rework, which is his artillery stance. He doesn't have like a huge sound cue for it, and it can really hit you out of nowhere at times, especially if there are 3 of these guys. So for that reason alone, I'd probably put him in like at least A. I don't think he's that hard. His map impact can be pretty brutal, but in most of the places you fight him, it's pretty easy to like block his AI, and his AI also likes to bug out all the time. So if he fought more viciously, I guess I would say he would go into A, or excuse me, S, but I put him in a high A for now because he is pretty devastating, but he's really mostly devastating if you have like a Lictor hounding you at the same time, because like on his own with like a bunch of warriors, he's not too bad, and his HP isn't that high anymore, even on absolute difficulty, and you can nuke him down pretty easily with plasma. Now, next guy we have here, Last Majoris. I guess we didn't properly order these. The Last Majoris here, or excuse me, the second to Last Majoris, is the Venom Cannon Warrior. Now, these guys are probably the easiest Majoris the Tyranids have. Their Venom Cannon charge up time has a very obvious sound cue. They aren't that bad when you're actually like learning the timings in this game. I would say I'd put them in like a B here, maybe even a C, to be honest, because they're not that bad, but they can one-shot you at times if you are at low HP, and they can get you killed. So I think they can properly kill you in this game. I guess you could put it in B, but most of the time you get frame trapped into their shot rather than getting outright shot, and a lot of classes in this game can like completely animation cancel them, or I should say only one. The Bulwark can just animation cancel and get out of any attack they do, and they're not that dangerous overall unless it gets you from like a side shot, so I put them here. Now, next guys here would be the Whip Warriors. Whip Warriors can be very dangerous when they have an enrage mechanic going, because their damage gets absurd, and a lot of people do struggle to parry and perfect block these guys. They do have like the hardest timing of any melee parry in this game. They're not that bad once you learn the timing. They do have a large area of effect though with their whips, so I'd probably put them in A. They can 100 to 0 you if you're like in a whole group of enraged guys, just because their whips are so obnoxiously high damage when they have an enraged mechanic going. That's why I put them here. I don't think they're quite as overtuned as Sword Warriors because they don't block your attacks, and I prefer these guys over these guys any day, which is why they go over here with the other semi-oppressive guys. Now we have the Trygon boss. I would say the Trygon boss is harder than the Hive Tyrant. Not super hard in this game though, and the thing with the boss spawns in this game is even with like a 66% HP buff, they don't do a ton without Extremis, and most of the boss fights, like once you properly learn their mechanics, it's pretty easy to take them down. And I'm actually not that good at fighting the Trygon compared to the Hive Tyrant. I haven't practiced him enough, but even then, he's not that dangerous, and like most of the time, even like a ton of fuck ups, you can just get by him with some medkits. So I put him in like B. He's really not that dangerous. And then the Hive Tyrant is not that dangerous really. Like once you learn his mechanics, he's kind of a bum. He is super susceptible to parries. He's very easy to perfect dodge. He is super predictable. He doesn't have like any super tight frames outside of like his wave when he has a sword warrior around him. And really his boss fight is more dependent on what Majoras pop out against you during the actual boss fight than the danger of the boss himself. So for that reason, I put him in like C. This guy's kind of fodder. He honestly, like, he's the easiest part of decapitation these days, which is pretty funny. Some people might struggle with him if they don't know his moveset, but like once you understand his moveset even a little bit, he is significantly easier than even the Trygon and like Carnifex and things like that, because he has no Extremis spawns. And even though the Trygon doesn't, the Trygon simply has meaner moves that can actually one-shot you. So we're gonna put him here. Next boss here is the Neurothrope. Neurothropes can go into S. Neurothrope waves can completely frame trap you. They are very obnoxious. They did make these guys have less HP than they used to, but overall their stagger can still get you at times, and they're pretty brutal in a squad. It really is just that wave, but that wave is really all they have to do, because the wave has a maximum range, but its range is pretty enormous, so if your team is not prepped for that, they will just blast you apart. Though I will say, if you have a teammate with like a Stalker bolt rifle, or even like a bolt sniper, they die pretty quickly. They do get nuked down quite easily, but I still think they have a greater impact in a dangerous horde of Extremis than a Carnifex does. Because when I'm playing in the siege mode hard and I'm playing like solo heavy or something, I nut at seeing 3 Carnifex instead of 2 Carnifex and a Neurothrope, because Neurothropes are just super devastating when they're in a group. So that's why we put them in S. Now for the Chaos faction here, we are going to be ranking the Tzaangors. These are the normal guys, little sword guys. I'd put these guys in B. They can be pretty annoying. They're pretty easy to kill. They don't have any shields, so they don't really block your ranged attacks, but they can still be more devastating than a Hormagaunt, so we're going to put them here. Now, Sword Warrior Tzaangors. These guys are pretty obnoxious. They used to be worse. They used to have like a ton of HP. They did nerf that over time. They aren't as bad as they used to be. I'd still say they are harder than the actual Sword Warrior guys here, so we put them in A. They're probably the strongest Minoris in the game. That's not like a Spore Mine, so I think they do deserve to be up here, because they can really hound you, and if you don't have like a fencing weapon or something, or even like a balanced weapon, they can do a lot of damage to you, and they're really more obnoxious in a squad of like Rubric Marines, because they just hound you down. They're not super easy to get rid of. Now, Chaos Cultists with machine guns, these guys can just go in D. They do practically nothing. Their damage is pathetic. They are super easy to kill. They die in one shot. You can walk through them like all cultists, but their damage is just not high enough to justify them being alive for very long, or like being even a target priority. So I just put them down here. I think they are the weakest Minoris in the entire game. And then Chaos Cultist Snipers. These guys on launch were cracked. They used to come out in like packs of 10 plus. It was absurd. They nerfed that. They're not as bad as it used to be, but they are still pretty devastating. I would put them in like a B, because if you don't know how to properly dodge these guys, they're honestly harder to dodge than the Tyranid Sniper warriors at times. So I would put them above them even, in the sense that they just, when they actually do get a shot off onto you, let's say you're fighting a Helbrute, or you're fighting a Scarab called Terminator and you're locked down, these guys can be like the final thing that kills you, more so than even these guys are. So I put them in B. You know what, honestly, I might even just put them in A, because their impact can be very high once they actually hit you. You could say the same thing about a Venom Cannon Warrior here. I just think they're hard to dodge just because of the way that Chaos is set up at times. But they also die instantaneously, but they also come out in greater packs. So for that reason, I'm going to put them in a very low A. Now, the next guy here are the Rubric Marine Bolt guys, the Warp Fire shooters. These guys are very obnoxious, and when they go enraged, they do a tremendous amount of damage. I would say they go into a high A. They are probably one of the most dangerous. They are the most dangerous version of Majora's Rubric Marine compared of the two, and I would say they just go here because their damage output can be pretty absurd when they go into enraged. And they're also the thing that usually kills you after a certain period of time. Like once your HP, or excuse me, your armor is gone and you're left stranded these are the guys that usually kill you and not the other guys. Now, here we have the Warp Flamethrower. These guys can go in like low B. I don't think they're very dangerous anymore, and they're very slow. Like, it's very easy to get out of their flame attack. Their big circle is much slower and much more easy. Oh, excuse me, it's much easier to get out of now. It's pretty easy to perfect dodge once you know the timing, so I just put them here. I don't think they are as dangerous as any of the guys up here. I'd rather fight these guys than like any single enemy up in this tree, except for like maybe the Minotaurs. But like when I'm thinking about the Minotaurs here, it's not that the Minotaurs is directly stronger than the Warp Flamethrower. It's just that they have a greater impact in a horde than I think he does, and he doesn't do a ton because his Flamethrower is really only useful at close range. And unless you're like in a very, very tight corridor, they usually just get fodderized. Now, Tzaangor Enlightened, when these guys came out, they were busted. They got toned down quite a bit. They don't move around as much. They don't throw their stuff as much. They are still very impactful, though. I'd put them even above a Rubric Marine because they have some really mean unblockables. They are very obnoxious to headshot with some weapons. They have a tiny little head hitbox. They're pretty easy to kill with plasma, but just the fact that they kind of zoom around the map and are super obnoxious, I just put them in A for that reason alone. I might even put them in S because they can actually like one-shot you at times, especially in the later waves of siege mode. Like, they're like the first enemy that can properly do it in my experience on Majora's, so I probably put them in like a low S. Now, next enemy here is the Scarab Occult Terminator. These guys are devastating. They have an unblockable. They dive on you. If you miss that, you're going to be knocked back for quite a while. Very hard to get your contested HP back from. They will lock you down to get shot by everything else on Chaos because they have a very long staggered attack string. I'd honestly say these guys are more devastating ever so slightly than the Soul Cannon Terminators because they just lock you down, and when there's like a Helbrute on you, or like even a triple Helbrute, they are what is going to properly kill you. So I'd put them in S easily because they are just super impactful. Now, these Soul Cannon guys, this might be a hot take. I don't think these guys are as bad as they used to be because now they only do 2 attack strings on their missile chain, and their soul cannon is probably the worst part about them, but you can stagger them out of that. And really, it is more about whether or not you can properly position yourself to be out of their line of sight, and that's a lot more easy to do than having a Scarab Occult Terminator that hunts you around every single corner. So I would put them in a very high A. They are still very impactful. Their soul cannon can be like super devastating if you're locked down, but the thing that locks you down is devastating for all enemies on Chaos. These guys are just part of that function, and overall I think they're still very strong, but their dodge timing is not too bad, and you can still like interrupt their soul cannon even though it is very dangerous. And also, I just want to note here that the soul cannon is like the only weapon in this game that fires at you and like rips apart your contested HP, because the way contested HP works is that once you have the white bar, if you get hit again, it's going to keep going down, and these guys hit multiple times, so they shred your contested HP too, which is like the most annoying part about them. And for that reason alone, I put them in a very, very high A. Even though I know a lot of people put them in S. Now, the next enemy we have here is a Sorcerer. These guys are really obnoxious, mainly because they time you out in siege mode and true solo. They keep bringing back Rubric Marines and making the waves take forever. I would say, like, on their own, they're not that difficult. They hardly ever hit you. The most devastating attack they have is like their little skull things that hunt you down slowly. So for that reason, they're kind of obnoxious. If I put them in like a high B, they're probably like the Zoanthrope in my opinion. They're not too bad. It's really more like an obnoxious enemy that just sits on the field. Now, the final guy we have here is the Helbrute. Helbrutes are S. They are the hardest terminus in the game. Their plasma shots do tremendous damage. Their AoE plasma shot that like leaves a giant trail can like one-shot you. They teleport. They have a huge area of denial. They are super obnoxious in just the whole team comp of the Chaos faction in general. And when there's like more than one of these guys, it's like the hardest fight in the game. Triple Helbrute is the hardest content in Space Marine 2. Triple Helbrute, the Triple Helbrute Assault solo is the hardest content by far, and Helbrutes in general, like, this is what wipes teams. The Triple Helbrute is just brutal, and really Helbrutes on their own, even with like a 33% buff, are just devastating, and they let all the other enemies in the Chaos faction get off their stuff because they hound you on top of having an area of denial effect. So that's why we put them in S. But that's pretty much all there is for this tier list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm sure some people would put the Soul Cannon in S, maybe in the Carnifex in S, but let me know in the comments. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, take it easy. Peace.